Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Heal with Grace podcast. We are diving deep in today to your inner critic, the place where you feel like you're not enough, you'll never get better, that voice that quietly sabotages your healing journey. If you're listening to this on the podcast, and I mean when you're listening to this audio only, just as the podcast, I hope you find a place that you can tune in, whether that's walking or driving or just listening. And if you're seeing me on YouTube, hello, welcome. Here's the thing, we're talking about this today because this voice of self criticism, this is actually continuing to perpetuate your symptoms. And so, what I want to help you understand is one, what's going on and how that happens, but also how do you rewrite that narrative and replace it with one that nurtures rather than punishes you? So, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, how negative self talk impacts our well being, and most importantly, how we can silence that self doubt and rewrite our inner stories. And one little announcement before we get started. I have talked about on here the power of feeling and being supported in this work because we cannot do this stuff alone at all. I cannot do this alone. Now, I have skills and tools that I help myself for sure, but all of the mentors, all the teachers, therapists, coaches that I have had have gotten me to this place today. And I am forever, forever grateful. And I will continue to always have a coach, a mentor, a therapist, someone that is in my corner and helping me see what I can't see, helping me see my blind spots. So that's what I love to do. I feel very called to this work because I've been helped in so many ways and I want to pay that forward and give that back. So if you are looking for support and you've thought about working with me or finding someone that help you through really just finding a safe home in your body and stop feeling so erratic and up and down with your symptoms, I would love to support you. So find the link below to fill out my contact form and I'll reply to you same day and we can figure out if we're a good fit and I can help you understand yourself a little bit better and guide you through this work. Because again, I think we all need guidance. So if you have any questions, just let me know. And if not, let's jump right in. Okay, now let's first start by breaking down what the inner critic actually is. So, the inner critic is this internal voice that constantly judges, criticizes, and doubts yourself. It doubts us, right? Like, while it might seem like it's just part of your life, because a lot of times we're not aware of it until we start to discover, like, oh, how many times we are criticizing ourselves or judging ourselves or feeling shame or guilt around just simply being who we are. This voice can really provide a major barrier to healing. We talk a lot about how to find safety in our bodies and our nervous systems, and we can't feel safe if we don't feel okay with who we are or what we're doing. And that's when criticism and judgment comes up. So think about it this way. If your body is struggling to recover, whether that's from emotional wounds, chronic illness, stress, a breakup, relationship, and your mind is constantly feeding it messages of inadequacy, shame, or fear, how can true healing really take place, right? Dr. Kristen Neff is a leading researcher on self compassion, and she explains that negative self talk activates our stress response and it releases cortisol, keeping us in a state of fight or flight. So remember that cortisol is a great thing. We need it. But when it is constantly being released and there's high levels of cortisol, or the opposite, super low and there's not enough, it can really keep us in the state of stress, in that state of fight or flight, which then impacts so much. It impacts our hormones, it impacts our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health. And when our body is in this survival mode, healing takes a back seat. Our bodies are inherently healing. It is incredible wisdom that we have in our bodies. And actually, all we really want it to do is to do its job, to actually heal ourselves and to rejuvenate the cells in our bodies and kind of reset ourselves when we go to sleep and have restful sleep. And then when we go through a stressful situation, we want it to work through. Our bodies are literally meant to do that. It's just that when we get in this state of stress chronically over time, it's not allowed, like it can't do that. It's put to the side. And so this is truly biological. It's not just like, oh, think positive and you'll be better, right? Or just have positive emotions and you'll feel better, right? It's not that at all, like not even close. I first want you to understand the impact of your negative thoughts, of the criticism. Because the more you think in a negative way and you keep hurting yourself with criticizing and judging yourself, it actually just perpetuates that state that you're in. When you keep putting yourself down, you reinforce those pathways in the brain that associate yourself with failure or with pain or with shame. And over time, this can lead to anxiety, depression, physical symptoms like fatigue, chronic pain, or digestive issues. I mean, specifically when we think about digestion, actually it has been shown, it has been studied that when we constantly think about ourselves in a negative way and or the food that we eat is a bad food or is negative or is going to hurt us, it actually changes our digestion. It's not, our bodies don't digest it because when we're constantly sending it signals of danger and criticizing ourselves with those negative thoughts, the digestion takes a back seat. Your body's like, oh, well, digestion takes energy, and so we need to put that to the side because we actually just need to survive right now. And so when we can come from this place of understanding the impact that our thoughts have on our bodies and start to shift that, oh man, there's so much that can change because then we have the landscape of a stronger foundation. It's, as simple as if you keep watering your plants with water, they will live and they will grow and they will be happy. If you don't water it with water, or maybe you put like Coca-Cola in your plants, that's not going to be very good, right? It's not going to grow. It's not actually what it needs to be nourished. So think about your thoughts in that way. The way that you respond to yourself matters. When we respond to ourselves in compassion and curiosity, that's the water for your plant, for your body. But when we respond with criticism and judgment and shame, and we should be somewhere that we're not, that's the Coke in the plant. So let me ask you this. Have you ever caught yourself saying things like, I should be better by now. I'm not strong enough to heal. Why are they doing it? Why are they healthy? Why are all these people having these success stories and I'm not? If you feel this way, you think this way, I promise you, you're not alone. There's so many people that do, myself included, have had many of those patterns before. But we have to have the power to change this inner dialogue. And that's what we're going to explore. So, what is the root of self doubt? Where does it come from? Our inner critic doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's often shaped by childhood experiences, societal pressures, and past traumas. So maybe you grew up in an environment where perfection was expected. You had to meet certain criteria, grades, sports medals, or whatever that might be, to feel good enough, to be good, essentially. Or perhaps you were told that being too emotional was a weakness, right? You never really felt safe to feel your emotions. And I have to say this shows up in many different ways. It doesn't just mean that we were in an abusive environment and neglected all the time or like criticized for feeling. Maybe you were. Totally happens. And if you were, oh, all the compassion to you. This also shows up as your parents missing you in an emotional way. Maybe they didn't actually really understand their emotions or learn how to sit with them or be with them in any way or any kind of healthy way. And so they never were able to give that space to you. Maybe you had a sick parent a lot and they couldn't show up to you in that way. As kids, and well, first, this does not mean that they were bad people or that we need to shame them. And your psyche at that time, that child, that inner, or that younger child part of you, doesn't know any different than they just didn't pay attention to you. They don't understand why. Even if you grasped it consciously, your unconscious doesn't get that. All it knows is that no one showed up for you and gave you the space to feel or to be yourself. And so then over time, you internalize these messages, these ingrained beliefs of, I'm not good enough, I can't handle things on my own, I'm not able to move past, I'm not able to feel like I'm too weak or I'm too much. That's how these things start to develop. And for many, self doubt originates from experiences where we just truly felt unsafe for being our authentic self. And when this happens, again, it may not be super overt, but it could be. It could be due to criticism from parents or teachers or peers, or even situations where showing up vulnerably led to rejection or ridicule. And again, when these internalized experiences happen, we learn to silence our true selves, to avoid discomfort or perceived failure. So, when this happens in the healing journey, and I'll share a little bit about something that I've noticed with myself. This is a very common pattern for me where I'll make some progress and I'll feel really good. And then I feel like I get stuck or nothing's moving in the right direction. And I have gone into this place of like, why can't I do this right? Like, I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm doing all the things. Why can't I get this right? Why is this still showing up for me? And then it leads to feelings of unworthiness, not good enough. And I saw this pattern happen over and over and over again. And it still happens in small ways. But what I've realized is that this voice inside of me isn't actually mine. It's really just the echoes of things that I was told or learned growing up, the expectation of perfectionism, or the confusion of not knowing how to feel, not having the space to feel, cultural narratives that glorify suffering over self care. I mean, how many times can people say, I'm busy and I don't have time, right? That's the way that our society's set up, is to not have time for ourselves, to feel, to be okay with that. If we can recognize where our self doubt comes from, it can be really helpful. It doesn't mean you need to pick apart all the pieces and understand trauma and understand every little piece of your life. Definitely doesn't mean that at all. But if you are in this place of feeling stuck and kind of feeling like, I don't really understand why you're not making progress, or you're feeling called to dig a little bit deeper, you might find this helpful to understand where these patterns came from. And once you can identify with that source, then you can start questioning whether those beliefs are actually true for you. So I'm going to guide you through some steps to help you kind of rewrite these belief systems. But I first just, if this resonates with you and you feel like you want to dig a little bit deeper, start to ask yourself, okay, when did I first hear these? Who told me this? Whether it was directly or indirectly. What did I learn from the patterns of my family, of how I grew up, of the people around me? How did they handle emotions? How did they handle shame or failure or disappointment or rejection or just difficulty in life? How did they handle it? And you might be surprised what comes up. Maybe you learn a little bit. And if you do this, I just want to help you, remind you, compassion, 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 and curiosity. Be curious, like, oh, interesting. That's something that I see. Okay. So how did that lead to where I am today? Okay. Oh, yeah. Like, let's give that pattern some compassion and let that inner part know that, okay, maybe we need to give it so much love and so much grace and so much flexibility. All right. So now I want to help you dive into how to rewrite these inner narratives. So, how do we shift out of the negative beliefs and create a more supportive or healing inner dialogue? One of the most powerful ways to do this is through self compassion, like I just mentioned. Instead of beating yourself up for the struggle, imagine speaking to yourself as you would a close friend. Would you tell your best friend that you're so weak for feeling this way? Why can't you just get your shit together? No, you wouldn't. At least I really hope you wouldn't. You would remind them of their strength, their resilience, their worth, right? And have compassion for them. Everyone is on their own journey and timeline, and I cannot repeat that enough. Everyone is on their own journey and timeline and comes to different parts of this work in their own way. So respond to yourself like you would a friend, like you would a loved one, like you would your pet. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take you through a few different steps to understand your negative thoughts and to start to shift them. So, if you are somewhere that you can't take notes and you want to, like, go ahead and save this episode, come back to it if you can. Take some notes and see where it takes you. So, first and foremost, you want to learn how to identify your negative thoughts. Maybe you already know a common negative pattern that you have about yourself. Write that down. And some of these might look like I'm not good enough. I always have to get it right. I'm too damaged. I'm too weak. I'm not smart enough. These are some common unconscious negative beliefs that often drive a lot of our criticism and judgment and shame about ourselves. So, write some of these things down and really lean into them. Is this what it feels like sometimes when you feel really bad about yourself, when you're doubting yourself all the time? If those don't work, see what else comes up. See what's common, what's a theme for you. Where does it show up? You can totally Google like negative self beliefs and you can find a list and go through them and see what resonates the most with you. Once you've done this, a big part of it is awareness, right? So, how can you recognize when this part keeps coming up? A lot of times it starts at the top where you will notice yourself being critical or judgmental, or maybe you notice yourself being really feeling like you need to control and feeling like you need to be really rigid around something. Maybe that's work or a relationship or something specific about your life, maybe your exercise routine. And it's really hard for you to deviate from a certain plan or way of being. If you notice yourself, if you notice your body getting tight and controlled and not able to like exhale and relax, or maybe you notice yourself using the word always. I always this, I always that. I can't do this, I can't do that. I should be doing this, I should be doing that, or I could have done this, or I could have done that. Those are a lot of examples of when we're stuck in a negative loop. So, awareness. When does this start coming up? Maybe you keep a note on your phone and you start to become aware of when this shows up. And so when you can recognize this pattern, what's going on there? What perpetuated this negative thought? What experience, person, symptom, like what is there that makes you go into this pattern of thought? And once you become more aware, I want you to start to ask yourself. Number 2 is challenging the thought. Ask yourself, is this thought absolutely true? Is there evidence to support this belief? Would I say this to someone I love? Probably not. And especially if you're using any of those words, always, should, could, never, it's not true. Absolutes are not truth. We are not always something. We are not never something. If anything, we're always evolving and changing. That's the only constant always. So maybe you start to challenge the thought like, all right, I've accomplished many things in my life and I'm constantly learning and growing. Or, you know what? I have made some progress in these areas, or I actually see some areas where I'm not having these symptoms. I'm not perfect and it's not complete, but I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm giving myself compassion. It doesn't mean you need to go from like everything sucks to I love myself and everything's better. We just need to meet ourselves in the middle. So, one way you can do this is reframe the thought into a positive or a neutral one, which would be number 3 in this whole process. So transform the self criticism into a supportive and compassionate statement. For example, instead of I am not strong enough to heal, say healing is a journey and I'm taking steps each day to support myself. Compassion, neutral, supportive statements. And then you just keep repeating this. Anytime you notice you're saying, I'm not strong enough, I'm a failure, you're going to keep coming back to this, like, you know what? Healing is a journey, and I am taking steps each day to support myself. One thing, too, if it doesn't feel true, if you feel like you're just saying the words to do it and it doesn't feel super connected, two things here. One, it takes practice. It does. It's not just going to like click into place right off the bat. But also, two, I would suggest doing some sort of like slowing down breath, really tuning into yourself when you say these things. Maybe you take 5 deep breaths, like in through your nose, filling up your lungs and out through your mouth, just kind of grounding and noticing, grounding into yourself, grounding into your body as you say the new phrase that you want to say. When you do that, you're connecting the cognitive thought with the body sense of feeling safe. Then you're matching those two together. Okay. And then I really just want you to keep repeating these, keep repeating them over and over. And some of these might look like, I am enough just as I am. My healing happens at my own pace. I deserve kindness and patience. And just keep using them over and over. This is different than just using positive affirmations to change your health. Remember, just thinking positively or trying to be positive is just a band-aid. And actually, it's not even really a band-aid, to be honest. It doesn't really work because if you're not connected and you're not understanding where it's coming from and unraveling the negative belief that that you're working with, then yeah, those positives don't happen. But if you can provide compassion and grace for yourself and be aware of those negative beliefs and patterns, then when you start to shift into the different ones that you want to try on, these new, more positive patterns and thought process, it will stick a little bit more. And again, it's a process, it's a journey. Maybe you practice gratitude for yourself and you write down things every day that you know you are working on. Like, okay, I spoke kindly to myself today. I drank enough water today. I took time to rest today. It doesn't matter how small it is. And I know some of you might be like, I don't know. Does that really work? Does that really do enough? Right? Yes. Yes. Do it over and over. A lot of this is consistency, right? Consistency and just reminding yourself that it does take time. Now, is this the one thing that's going to completely heal you? No, but it's actually like one of the biggest parts. Your belief systems have everything to do with you making progress. When I see people getting really stuck, it's when they haven't worked with their belief systems and they still feel like, or they still think of themselves as a horrible person and they have zero self esteem. We cannot make a whole lot of progress if we don't really like pour into and nourish ourselves on our inner level. Lastly, surround yourself with people with positive reinforcement, with supportive friends, a journal where you can track your progress. So, the people that we surround ourselves with impact how we think about ourselves. It's mirroring. Like when you're surrounded by a bunch of people that gossip all the time, that judge themselves, that talk negatively about everything, that have something negative to say about everything all the time, that's exhausting and you take it on yourself and that energy transfers to your mind and to your body. So look at who you're surrounding yourself with, the types of activities you're surrounding yourself with, the content that you're taking in. This is a big one. What are you consuming? Is it uplifting? Is it funny? Is it creative? Or is it just a bunch of negative news and gossip and negative patterns that you're viewing from other people? That's not going to help you. So get really honest with yourself. What are you surrounding yourself with? Self-doubt, negative self-esteem is contagious. Okay. One last part of this that I really want to help you understand is that piece of really connecting these negative thoughts to feeling actually true. So, one thing to remember is that our inner critic often emerges as a response to fear and unsafety. So, when we feel threatened, whether emotionally or physically, our brain searches for ways to regain control. Self-criticism becomes a misguided tool to fix ourselves before external rejection or failure can occur. So, our negative thoughts are basically like protective mechanisms to stop us from something that our brains, that our nervous systems perceive as unsafe. So, instead you're going to basically shame yourself so that no one else can shame you. That's kind of the idea, but it doesn't actually work like that. So, when you start to become aware of the thought patterns, I want you to also tune into your body patterns. I want you to recognize, what is your body feeling? Does it feel heavy, tight, rigid, controlled? Do you feel pain when you're more negative in your thoughts and you're more shameful or critical in your thoughts? When you do, when that self criticism arises, I want you to place a hand on your heart and take a deep breath and remind yourself that you're safe in this moment. Engage in slow breath, gentle movement. Notice that fear. Fear is underneath criticism and judgment. If you have the space to do so, go into feeling this fear. And the way that you can do that is slowly doing it. Maybe it's just for 2 minutes at a time. Recognizing that that fear is there is that first step. What does fear feel like in your body? Is it like that pit in your stomach? Is it tightness in your chest? Is it shortness in your breath? Start to understand what fear feels like in your body so that when you feel it, you can expand your window of tolerance for it by breathing and reminding yourself and your body and your mind that it's safe to feel this fear. Maybe you ground your feet into the ground and you name 5 things that you can see, hear, and feel to help your nervous system soothe if it's in fight or flight. Keep establishing safety and reminding yourself that you're learning. Mistakes are part of this. Share your feelings with yourself or with someone that you trust. And just keep reminding yourself to affirm safety, affirm your worth. You are not your negative thoughts, your self doubt thoughts. Those are not truth. So, when we can shift into safety and out of fear, which again, fear is at the bottom of self judgment, it's at the root. It allows your body and mind to move from that fear place to healing. And healing happens when we feel safe enough to allow it. Okay, as we wrap up, I'm going to remind you again. I've probably said it many times, but I know I need to hear it over and over, that you are not your thoughts. Your inner critic is just a voice. It is not you. And you have the power to rewrite these, to rewrite your story. So choose self compassion over self judgment and embrace healing with kindness. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and remember, you are worthy of healing always.